日本首相高市早苗口出狂言，震撼他竟公开威胁中国高志凯教授现身。他是中国国际问题专家，曾任总统顾问。高市早苗来自右翼势力，他带领日本重整军备，平访靖国神社，拥抱战犯幽灵。这位日本首相阴险挑衅，他幻想否认，无条件投降，试图重申军国主义，还威胁介入台海。话音未落，高志凯教授火药味十足回击，他直指联合国敌国条款，预告中国绝对反击权，热血沸腾，大快人心，时刻即将来临。让我们来看高志凯如何暴击。
Joining us now to talk about this are two of the smartest people that I know who have appeared here on this show before. Victor Gao and I got to know each other in China while I was covering the Shanghai summit. Really smart guy, good guy. He's an expert on China's rise economically because he was a part of it. He advised the president at the time, and he's a former investment banker with Morgan Stanley. Also joining us from Japan is none other than Pascal Lota. He is a Swiss academic, professor of neutrality studies, who hosts a very, very good and popular podcast, which I happen to be a fan of. It's called Neutrality Studies. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hello. Listen, there's some breaking news that we have to start with. A little bit off topic, but maybe not so much. Reuters has just reported, and what they're reporting is that Iran is very close to a deal with China to purchase anti-ship cruise missiles. This, of course, is just as the United States is getting ready to deploy a vast naval force, or already has, to the Iranian coast ahead of a possible attack on Iran. It's a little off topic, but Victor, would you comment on this for us? Because we're talking about Chinese, they're called CM-302 missiles, described as supersonic missiles. They have a range of about 300,000 kilometers. They're designed to evade shipborne defenses they go really low down to almost the surface of the water and then can rise again. Did I say something? 300, yes, kilometers. Victor, what do you make of this? What should we think of this? What does it say?
Thank you very much. Both China and Iran are two fully independent countries with their sovereignty. And there is no international law which prohibits China and Iran to engage with each other in commercial transactions. And China happens to produce some of the most sophisticated missiles of all kinds. And it's absolutely right for China and Iran to size up each other and engage in whatever economic and commercial transactions they desire to do that, including involving such military missiles. And I think the whole world should be put on notice that both China and Iran will have full sovereign right to do such commercial transactions with each other, and no country should pretend to be surprised.
But given the timing of what's going on right now, those sound a little bit like fighting words. Pascal, you want to take this?
I mean, to me, this sounds very much like China is sending a very, very clear message, which is that if there will be a war, it will certainly be a missile war, right? The way that we've seen it in June last year during the 12th-day war. That was not fought with boots on the ground. It was not fought with ships on the sea. It was fought with the missiles that were flying over these other countries. This time, if the United States intervenes, of course, there are going to be missiles on the sea. But there are going to be ships on the sea, but those ships are going to be just as vulnerable to missiles. And China just made it very clear that if the missile war happens, and if it takes quite a bit of time, like the Ukraine war, if it's not done within a couple of weeks, then Chinese missiles will be ready to be supplied. So it's not just the Iranian capacity to produce missiles, it's also the capacity of China to supply them. And, this will take time. Operating these missiles will take time, but the signal, the political signal is very clear.
Yeah, so that's the point, Victor. I mean, is China using this moment on the brink of what could be an attack on Iran by the United States to send a message to the United States with this announcement right now? I mean, if they'd said this a year ago, nobody would have even paid attention, but it matters now, no?
Well, it is clear to everyone in the world in decency that Iran is not threatening the United States with war or military confrontation. It is just the opposite. The United States is threatening war against Iran, coupled with Israel. Therefore, let's really clarify who is at fault, who is not at fault. Iran is not threatening war against the United States. It's the United States threatening war against Iran. So how can you say, now that Iran is being threatened with war and military confrontation by the United States, therefore you should not export missiles to Iran? It's just the opposite. The United States should stop threatening Iran with war and engage with Iran in peace, rather than in such military jingoism.
Speaking of the United States, they're certainly very much involved militaristically with Japan of late. And there seems to be this charge that we heard at the Munich summit just a little while ago that Japan seems to be over-militarizing itself, and China is sending them this message that you heard just a little while ago in no uncertain terms. Does China have a point, Pascal, when it makes that warning to Japan?
Yes, it does. I mean, China clearly has very, very bad memories of Japan, and we must never forget all of the crimes that were committed in China, mainland China, in the north, the millions of people who died during the 15-year war, 1931 to 1945. And we must not underestimate just the sheer emotions that any form of Japanese militarism invokes in China. On the other hand, when we try to understand what recently happened, we also must keep in mind that what Prime Minister Takaichi said was clearly a breach of protocol. It was clearly something that even Mr. Abe before her, the long-serving right-wing prime minister, never actually said. And she did so, but she did in the context of being questioned by the opposition party. I still interpret it as a slip of the tongue. Not that she didn't think so, she does, but that she said so was clearly unwise. But it kind of unleashed a box of Pandora on, especially because in China, this cannot be interpreted in any other way.
Are you convinced, Victor, that the Japanese are, in fact, militarizing to a dangerous or threatening level?
Let me really go to the jugular of this issue. I think what Prime Minister Takaichi did and said in recent weeks and months is tantamount to Japan's attempt to deny the ironclad verdict of Japan's unconditional surrender to China and other allied countries, including the United States and the former Soviet Union and the United Kingdom, because Japan unconditionally surrendered. And there are terms for Japan never to constitute another military threat against China. Otherwise, they will be in breach of their unconditional surrender terms. And China, being a victor nation, has the absolute full right to strike at Japan to prevent the rise of Japanese militarism or neo-Japanese fascism, period. That's carved in the United Nations Charter. If you read the enemy state clause, it specifically clarifies China's right to use unilateral military might against Japan to prevent Japan from constituting another military threat against China, especially if Japan dares to arm itself with nuclear weapons. I've declared on many occasions, the moment Japan possesses nuclear weapon will be the moment of the annihilation of Japan as a state. Period. No politician, including Prime Minister Takaichi, should indulge in fantasy that they could be allowed to militarily arm itself to constitute another threat or to threaten war against China, which is a victor nation, and Japan is the unconditionally surrendering country back in 1945. We should keep this in historical perspective, and mankind as a whole should unite to deny Japan any chance of remilitarization and constituting another militaristic or fascist threat to China. China lost 35 million of our countrymen at the hands of the Japanese militarists. Should anyone really expect that China should allow the re-rise of Japanese militarism and neo-Japanese fascism? No way. Prime Minister Takashiki, wake up from your fantasy. You should never be allowed to rearm yourself to constitute another threat to China or to Russia or to Korea, for example, or to the United States, because we all need to remember Pearl Harbor. Never forget Pearl Harbor.
Victor, those are really strong words. I just want to make sure I heard you clearly, because I think what you just said will likely make news. You're saying China has the preemptive right to strike Japan, and not only has the right to do so, but will do so if it feels that Japan is over-militarizing. Is that what you say?
Absolutely. That's authorized in the United Nations Charter regarding the enemy state clause. It is specifically stipulated that the enemy state, which includes Japan, if they dare to rearm itself to constitute a military threat against a victor nation, which includes China, then the victor nation has the right to use preemptive military might to prevent that remilitarization or neo-Japanese fascism from raising its dangerous head. It's carved in stone. It's part of the international order that we are living through. So no one in the world should pretend that they are ignorant of this enemy state clause contained very secretly in the United Nations Charter.
Just one final question so people can understand what you're saying. Is the threshold for a preemptive strike the determination that Japan has some kind of nuclear weaponry capability, or something shy of that?
Well, as I mentioned, the moment Japan possesses the nuclear weapon will be the moment of the annihilation of Japan as a state, period. Now, before then, if Japan tried to arm itself with other weapons of mass destruction and to constitute a military threat or to threaten to use war against China, these all may be considered as sufficient for triggering the enemy state clause in the United Nations Charter. Therefore, I just hope Prime Minister Takaichi will not really pretend to be ignorant of the enemy state clause in the United Nations Charter, and she should not be allowed to turn every inch of the land in Japan into a battleground and push the 120 million Japanese people into the abyss of war again. Japan suffered hugely at the hands of the Japanese fascism before they unconditionally surrendered in 1945. They should never be allowed to be pushed again into the abyss of war or threat of war or aggression against China.
看完刚才高志凯教授的暴击，我心里真是大快人心。作为海外华人，我们太需要这样的硬气声音了。高志凯教授说的对极了，日本首相高市早苗的狂言暴露了典型的霸权焦虑，这就是心理学上的认知失调。他明明知道日本无条件投降，却幻想重整军备，威胁中国。我们中国人深知历史伤痛，35万同胞丧生日军之手，这数字不是空谈，是血泪铸就的铁证。高市早苗第一个坑叫否认历史，他无视1945年投降书，想把靖国神社变成圣地。高志凯直接拆解联合国敌国条款明文规定，中国有先发制人权利。第二个坑是台海挑衅他，口称为台北而战，不料这推日本民众入战争深渊。我们的反击方式简单，就是坚守和平底线，越线必击。就像街头混混想抢农夫田地，农夫拿起锄头，混混自然退散，中方总处道义高地。第三个坑是美日联手幻象，美国800多军事基地环球，却不忘珍珠港，教训日本，想拉美国下水，纯属自掘坟墓。我们中国用一代人消除绝对贫困，经济即将超美，谁敢挑衅谁倒霉。高志凯教授理性克制，却知识权威满满。他引用联合国宪章，让对手无处遁形。我们华人看在眼里，文化认同油然而生。这不只是个人辩论，是中华复兴的缩影。回溯历史，日本军国主义曾横扫亚洲，如今妄图复辟，却撞上中国铁壁文明视角下，这是历史周期率的验证。弱肉强食已过时，和平发展才是王道。人类命运共同体，中国率先倡导高市早苗醒醒吧，你的阴谋注定破灭。高志凯的暴击不能停，我们挺中国。用幽默说句，日本若再作死，珍珠港 2.0 在等你。历史车轮滚滚向前，中华强盛无可阻挡。